and people I'm sure will continue joining. I believe everyone would have just heard as well to notify everyone that this session is being recorded, so you are aware. This is not currently, we are not, do not have these available, but these CLEs that we are presenting will eventually in the future have a repository of them for Florida attorneys to be able to access. But to welcome everyone here, this is a presentation by the Cybersecurity and Privacy Law Committee. We're a standing committee on the Florida Bar, and this is part of a series we're doing to just further educate Florida attorneys on cybersecurity. I hope that it's at the forefront of everyone's mind because it makes headlines every single day. We were just chatting about the new cryptocurrency theft that occurred. But this CLE specifically here is geared towards attorneys and what to do at your own law firm before a breach happens. So this will be a 1 hour presentation. For those that just joined, the course number is 8961. That's the CLE course number that you can put on your Florida Bar portal to certify that you've done CLE credits. And so let's go ahead and move forward. Go to the next slide, please, Henry.
Sure.
This will go for about an hour. You said we will have the chat. I will be monitoring the chat myself as we go through. Please feel free to ask questions. We may not get to all of them, but I will try to monitor those for questions that could be really useful to talk about. Cybersecurity, we don't want it to be a mystifying topic, so we do want to see just questions asked there. And this will be recorded as well. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right. Without further ado, I do want to, I probably even you can see the speakers we have here. I should have introduced who myself I am. I am the chair of the planning subcommittee of the Cybersecurity and Privacy Law Committee. Uh, by background, I'm an insurance, a cyber insurance attorney. So sit in a very niche field at the intersection of privacy attorneys and cybersecurity issues, and I'm involved in incident response. So this whole area fascinates me, and I get to work with people like our presenters here all the time and dealing with privacy issues and cyber incidents. So, but we're not here to hear from me. We're here to hear from true experts. So we have Henry Ortiz and Adam Hubble here. Henry, he's in risk management consulting. He's 20 years in critical infrastructure sectors, really knowledgeable about HIPAA, Department of Defense contracting and cybersecurity requirements there. Both of these guys are Florida licensed attorneys. Please check them out on LinkedIn. You can understand the bio and where they're coming from. And then Adam, he works for the Florida government, also involved in privacy work, has his CIPP certifications. Really, the information on screen here is very limited in terms of these guys' expertise. So, you know, go do their thing, check out their LinkedIn profile, see everything they've been doing. But they're here to share with us about cybersecurity and privacy and what to do in your law firm. So let's go ahead and go on, and Adam and Henry will really be taking most of it from here.
Kevin, thank you so much for the introduction. I don't hold myself out as a cybersecurity expert, but I have learned so much preparing for this. Henry's taught me a lot, so hopefully I can share
Mhm.
that with our guests today. As Kevin said, I'm Adam Hubble, and I'll be guiding you through today's discussion along with Henry. My expertise is more on the privacy side than cybersecurity. I have had the opportunity to work in law firms of all sizes, from a solo for a while all the way up to a large national law firm. So I have a sense of some of the unique challenges that all of you face when it comes to cybersecurity. Um, so my role today is to guide you through this discussion. I hope we can provide some valuable, actionable insights and keep the technical jargon to a reasonable level. I want you to walk away having learned some new concepts and being able to apply something, but I don't want you to feel like it's a whole new language. Um, we'll start by discussing some of the unique risks that law firms face, and then we'll dive into the practical steps. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you find today's session informative and valuable. Henry, will you next slide?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me, well, it's okay. We had a prior webinar late last year on incident response, which is what to do after a cyber attack. That was really helpful. But this webinar, we're going to go back to the beginning and discuss what to do to prevent a cyber attack, because that's what we hope we can do. Okay, and so why we're here. Um, Law firms of all sizes really are prime targets for cyber criminals, for maybe obvious reasons. The sensitive data that we all have in our law firms, client files, financial documents, uh, medical records, intellectual property in some cases. So I encourage you to, while we're going through today, think about the uh, types of data or other assets you may have that's specific to you. And so what are the risks? Obviously, financial loss, fines, malpractice, and reputational damage is a risk that is really hard to quantify, but in some cases, it could be the biggest risk you face. And we wanted to point out that firms of all sizes are at risk. Solo practitioners make up a little over a third of Florida attorneys. 70% of us work in firms with 10 or fewer attorneys. So we're thinking about firms of all sizes, from solo all the way up to large firms. We're going to help provide information that's valuable for all of you. Next slide.
Sure,
Um,
let me go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Henry, if you want.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump in here a little bit. Many times when we read about or hear about or attend a presentation about cybersecurity, many times we're presented with information about the actual incident, what was the response, when to include agencies like the FBI, which is actually absolutely very valuable information. This webinar, I wanted to talk a little bit about governance. So governance is super important when we look at multiple different frameworks for data privacy, cybersecurity, risk management. Governance is a relatively new chapter element in those frameworks. But I will say it's extremely critical. Why? Many of the companies that I do consulting with, um, I will say that the main factor, one of the main factors to determine if a business or a law firm is well protected or not, is if they have the support of their management team, right? The executive team. If the executives and we in our law firms, we are the executives in our law firms. So it needs to start with us, right? We need to take a conscious step to recognize that our law firms need to be protected. It doesn't mean that we need to become experts in every cybersecurity technology out there, but we need to listen to the employees, right? It might be our IT department, it could be our receptionist that brings a vulnerability to our attention. So pay attention to those conversations and support the initiatives that your team or your IT provider may try to implement to protect your firm. Many times we spend a lot of time looking at business growth strategies, right? Absolutely, very important. But risk management strategy also needs our attention. To create the policies and procedures, and I fully understand that there are a few law firms that are quite small. A solo practitioner needs to wear multiple hats, right? It needs to be the accountant, it needs to be the marketing team, it needs to be now the cybersecurity expert. So we'll give you some information here. There are quite a few templates out there that are available to create policies and procedures, but you need more specific information as to what should be included in those policies and procedures. And that is the purpose of this webinar. Keep in mind, so many times we ask a question, right? We said, oh, well, okay, what are the regulations from a cybersecurity point of view? What are the rules that apply to a law firm? The fact is that right now we're held to the reasonable personal standard, right? I wish there was a very clear and complete regulation that we could use as a checklist to say, hey, law firm have you done this? Yes, 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 and then show, hey, I'm in compliance with the regulations. Right now, we're held up to the reasonable person standard. But just remember, ethical rules protect the confidentiality of client information. So, so let's go back here. And I agree with you, Kevin, on the clicking, on the animation. So, what to do here? The The objective of this webinar is to teach you a little bit how you can do a risk assessment of your own law firm. We're not going to be looking at the details of a complete risk assessment, but we're going to give you the basics. And you can take some steps to identify your critical assets and then have a more productive conversation with your staff or with your IT service provider. And I just want to make clarification here. There are a few vendors that provide either free or low-cost scans to identify vulnerabilities. That is only a network scan, and by the end of this presentation, you will better understand the difference. But basically, a network scan is just a technology scan. It will show anything that is connected to the network, anything that is not connected to the network. Let's say that your laptop is offline, your receptionist is working remotely, you have a printer that is in a remote location. All of that stuff will not show in a scan. So just beware that a scan may not show all of the vulnerabilities in your firm.
Henry, I'm glad you mentioned the checklist. I remember when I first started working on this with you, I said we need to give people something they can leave the webinar and they can do something with. And you taught me over the course of a few conversations that every law firm is so unique that
Absolutely.
everybody can't do the same. Everybody can't just follow a checklist, because once you get into what your law firm has, you have to differentiate what you're doing to protect your data. So that's why we can't have a checklist. But so
Yeah,
what we do have that we're telling people about today is where to begin, because everybody can't sort of begin at the same place, right?
no,
It's
absolutely.
kind of where we're getting
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah. And that's what I try to create here, right? And we'll go through each one of these four steps. So identify the critical assets, identify your vulnerabilities, um, try to, and I know that this is difficult for somebody who doesn't work in cybersecurity, but try to understand a little bit of what are the threats affecting your law firm, and we'll explain that. And then prioritize what are the risks and the assets that you should be protecting. I will say that it's impossible to protect every single asset. I will say that it's impossible to eliminate every single vulnerability. So that's where prioritization is very important. So let's look at the definition of
Henry, I'm going to throw in one thing because it was related to what you just said. One of the reasons it was mentioned on there was the professional responsibility ethics rules that attorneys have is one reason why we talk about all of this. And a plug for this committee, the Cybersecurity and Privacy Law Committee, currently does have a proposed amendment to Ethics Opinion 10-2. Everyone is welcome to just Google that because you'll see the Florida Bar publication showing the proposed amendments. Um, a fair chance that that will get adopted. So, something very practical to take away is, what the Professional Ethics Committee of the Florida Bar not officially adopted yet, but it's worth looking at because the proposed change is out there of, why attorneys have a duty to know what they're talking about here in terms of protecting client data.
no,
And
absolutely.
it is
It's
it
a
is
reality.
voluntary. And I
Hmm.
know nobody wants, more rules put on them, but I'll say I encourage everybody to approach it with an open mind. I think it's going to be very useful and helpful.
No, absolutely. So that is no, that is a good conversation. And when it comes to risk management, and again, right? So I work with a critical infrastructure, healthcare, Department of Defense, contractors. Risk management can be overwhelming. But it is important to have a place to start. And there are many different pieces of the puzzle and many different tools that we can utilize. One of them is a risk assessment. The other one is an incident response plan, tabletop exercises. And I will say that um, one of the pieces is not the entire solution, right? But it's good to understand and to look at multiple different recommendations as to absolutely to secure our law firms. So let's go back to the critical asset, and basically, it's any asset that, if compromised, will prevent your law firm from performing its mission. The mission of a law firm, hey, provide legal services, right? So many times we look at data only as the asset that we should be protecting. And absolutely, that is true. Data is a critical asset of a law firm. Without data, you're not going to be able to provide services to your clients. Imagine if you have been working with a client for a couple of years in preparation for litigation, and all of that data is gone. That will be quite damaging to the image of your law firm to have that conversation with a client. But we collect a lot of personal identifiable information from our clients. So we need to be aware of that. The other part is that if you have clients in healthcare, you may be subject to HIPAA regulations. So it is important also that you confirm that with your clients, and that you look at that in the agreements that you have. If you have clients, the city, the county, the electrical company, a telecommunications company, you may be subject to additional regulations as well. If you're providing a contract, whether transactional or litigation, legal services to contractors of the Department of Defense, you may be subject to CMMC as well, just because of the subject matter of those contracts and the content of the information in those contracts. So that will be something to be aware of. When it comes to law firms, even if you don't work in one of those sectors, realize that we collect a lot of information, right? Copies of driver's licenses, marriage certificates, information about children, birth certificates, medical insurance, school locations, passports, etc. So it's a lot of information. So going back to a couple of slides, the reasonable person standard, right, and the obligation to keep information confidential. We have to be more proactive, securing our law firms, and absolutely we'll continue diving into this. What questions do you have, Adam?
Um, yeah, so I think well we all that the personally identifiable information, PII, that might be a new term for some people, but I think that we kind of understand that. Like that's sort of what would typically be, in your hard file in your filing cabinet somewhere. But then the other assets, for example, like your website.
Yeah, and we'll go absolutely. We'll go on the next website on the next slide. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Something that I wanted. Go ahead.
No. So I think that was something that I learned that I think people should pay a bit more attention to when they're in their first step. You're identifying your critical assets, and so
Absolutely.
you're thinking of your client file
Yeah.
for sure. But then also the next step is thinking of all those other things that affect your business, and so that's something I learned that I think people probably overlook.
No, absolutely. Now let
I'll
me go back to
I'll
the
say
yeah.
what I find useful, and this is, I sit in the insurance claims world, the simple thing in the cyber insurance policies, PII is often defined by every state's different statute, and it says this is how Ohio defines it, this is how Indiana defines it, this is how Florida defines it. And that definition of it determines whether, if you lose that information, if you legally have to notify people. And so that's why we care about what the definition of PII is, because then if you lose it, there's more consequences for it.
No, absolutely. On that, I will say that a few states have provided a list of examples of what is personal identifiable information. And I will say that the list, don't rely on the lists, right? Because that continues to evolve. It's basically anything that could reasonably be utilized to identify an individual. So in the case of geolocation, for example, right, with a cell phone, I know there are a few marketing campaigns out there, including from law firms that are collecting information from users, right? Hey, would you like more information? Click here on Facebook or Instagram, and it will automatically collect the name, email address of the person who's requesting services. How are you keeping that information? Could that information be used to identify your potential client? So absolutely. Yeah, look at the definitions, but don't rely too much on the examples. That continues to evolve and it will continue to evolve as technology evolves as well. So absolutely. So data is critical, protected. Now let's look at some other assets, right? And again, a critical asset is something that if compromised, will prevent your law firm from performing its mission of providing legal services. So start thinking about your brand, right? What if your domain is hacked? Your website, your email, your phone, your social media, your marketing. That is quite important. And later on, we're going to be talking about risk tolerance and risk appetite, right? Because definitely this will prevent you from providing legal services. The next question may be, how long are you willing to go without these assets? If those assets are offline for 24 hours, are you okay with that? If those assets are not available to you for 2 months, are you okay with that? Right? So don't simply discount it because you say, well, it's just my website. I'll just build another one and that is okay. Um, Go ahead and list it and ask yourself how much do you rely on that asset. Your calendaring tool, is it online? What if somebody hacks into it and changes all the dates or deletes all the dates in your calendar? That'll be quite important. That is a critical asset in my opinion. Your escrow account records, online tools, if you have anything connected to your website that allows people to book consultations with you and accept payments or any other form of payments, your accounting software. Um, your off-counsel and co-counsel relationships, those are valuable assets, right? They need to be protected. What are the tools that law firms are utilizing to maintain those off-counsel or co-counsel or relationships? Do you have a shared drive? Do you have a portal? How are you securing those communications between multiple different law firms? Your CRM, do you have remote workers, right? Are you outsourcing call answering services? Where are they located? And then we'll touch a little bit on the VPN and the portals. We'll dive deeper into that. Your credentials, right? Your credentials to connect to the court systems, to the Florida Bar website. That is an asset that, in my opinion, needs to be protected. So again, anything that if compromised will negatively affect your ability to provide services to your clients. And this could be an exercise. Simply, take a piece of paper, get a cup of coffee, and start thinking. What are those 20% of your assets that will affect 80% of your operations? And anything that lands on that list that is a critical asset that needs to be protected. Now, it doesn't mean that you are the cybersecurity expert looking for solutions and configuring your firewalls and your updates and your patches. No, it simply means that now you have a list to utilize when you have a conversation with an IT department, with a solutions provider. Now your conversation is going to be more productive. and it's going to be centered on the actual assets that should be protected. What questions do you have, Adam?
Yeah, I have so many questions about
Yeah, go ahead.
a lot of those things, but so we're gonna identify the critical assets here. But in the interest of time, I think we need to go to the next step. So after we identify all these assets, we need to prioritize them. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, so and so here we use a few different qualifiers, right? So the first one is that you need to know your threats, and those are external threats. If you're not in the cybersecurity industry, maybe you say, well, I really don't know what is going to be affecting my law firm, but you can take a guess. If you find yourself traveling frequently, connecting your computer from a public network at the airport, at the lobby of a hospital, at Starbucks, then it is likely that that is a threat. Somebody could hack into your computer by utilizing a public network connection. Vulnerabilities, they're internal. That is something that is inside your law firm, inside your technology. What are the vulnerabilities that you have? I'm not using a VPN connection. I'm using my brother's computer instead of my computer. So I have no idea what software or malware my brother may have. So those are vulnerabilities that exist within the technology of the policies that you have. The next one is the impact. So, all right, cool. You identify your threats, you identify your vulnerabilities. If a threat happens to exploit one of your vulnerabilities, what will be the impact that it has on your law firm? Is it going to be a high impact, a medium impact, a low impact? And then the other one is what is the likelihood, right? So I provide two examples here. Think of two different websites. One with no connections to the firm's data. It's simply a website out there that only has your address and your telephone number. Absolutely. Very important. So new clients can see who you are and the services that you advertise. Can it be hacked? Yeah, absolutely. Is it likely to be hacked? Yeah, absolutely, sure. But what is going to be the impact that it has in your law firm is quite low. In my opinion, this wouldn't be an asset that you want to prioritize. If it gets hacked, that they will not have access to your well. And I let me go back. Absolutely, if you can absolutely protect every single asset, go ahead and do it. But if you have a limited budget and limited time, this website will not make it to the top of the list of items to secure. However, if in your website you have a portal where clients can connect, where clients can make payments, where they have access to files, that is 100% an asset that you need to protect. It just has way too many vulnerabilities. And the impact, if somebody hacks into that portal, they have information not only for the client, but also for all of the other clients where you have information. They have information about your payment systems, your potentially your escrow account. So that is the exercise that you want to go through, right? So you listed the assets, you went through the threats, vulnerabilities, and impact analysis, and the likelihood. So
so
again, you continue building that list. Mhm.
so when I prioritize, I'm gonna kind of do a balancing test. So like I'm gonna identify like my highest value stuff, but then also look at the risk. Like if I say my trust account, maybe that's my highest value, but I use a reputable bank and I'm the only one that knows the password. So the risk
Mhm.
is super low. So I don't need to do much else. So that's like lower on my like I don't have to think much about that, right? Or
So let's think about it. So you mentioned a trust account, right? So what are the known threats? Well, yeah, anybody trying to get to your client's money. That is important, right? The conversation that you need to have with the bank is what are the known vulnerabilities that they have, and identify that are they well protected or well they secured. So don't simply delegate that responsibility to the bank, right? So those are the important questions that you need to be asking. The impact is quite severe. But here comes a point that you can have assets that are internal or assets that are internal, and then assets that are external. That escrow account, absolutely, the funds, they belong to your clients. You manage the escrow account, but the actual technology to manage and to safekeep that capital belongs to the bank. So there is very little power that you have to implement additional solutions, right? So you're not able to send your IT staff to install a firewall for the bank. You're gonna be like, oh, come on, we got everything. So at that moment, what you need to rely is on policies and contract notices, waivers that you provide to your bank. And you know, we're all attorneys, so we write a note to the bank and we make it clear that we are relying on them to safeguard those assets. Um, so that it was an extreme example, right? But
Mm.
let's say that you have a portal that provides information to your clients that maybe provide about a brand new vendor developing their software out of California or Canada or France or the UK. Um, you need to have the conversation with them as well, right? Make them responsible and make them understand that that data belongs to you. They're not allowed to sell, copy, or use that information for marketing purposes. And
Mm.
today, and I will tell you that, especially as for solo practitioners, is so tempting to use a whole lot of free tools that are available online for CRMs and marketing. Believe me, it's not worth it. It's not
Those
worth
costs add up. When you start paying for every little service you use, it adds up. So I understand the temptation. But
Absolutely.
at the
So
end of
so
the
it's
day, right, it's risk management, right? It's not we can't totally avoid. It's like driving your car. You want to be safe, but there's always risk of an accident. But yeah, that does bring us to
Mhm.
the next slide of who owns the assets. We need to identify that, right?
Absolutely. So especially when it comes to data, right? And money, but every asset in general. So start asking yourself who owns that, who manages that, and have those conversations with your vendors, right? Many times we're very quick to sign an agreement and pay a monthly fee for a CRM platform without asking exactly, hey, is your support team located inside the US? Will anybody from the Philippines, India, or China be connecting to provide technical support? Yes, no. That is information that you need to be aware of, right? Because that's going to help your decision making as the executive of the firm conclude that it's a risk that you want to take or not. If that is information that you need to get consent from your clients before you can use that platform. So again, and I will say that risk management can be extremely overwhelming, but that is where we use the different frameworks, right? Because then the frameworks, they help us break all of this information into questions that will help us create a strategy. So when it comes to that asset, whether it's internal or external, so ask who manages that, who has access to it, where are they connecting from, inside the state, out of the country, is it replicated? And I will say that my guess is that 100% of the time data is being replicated,
What
right?
do you mean by that? Will you explain?
Sure. So there's two, well, multiple concepts, right? To make a copy, to create a backup, or to have a replication. So many platforms online, they want to be up and running 99.99999% of the time. The only way that they can accomplish that is by replicating that data to multiple different servers. So if server number one goes offline, then server number two automatically takes over, and then it will be online at all times. That implies replication. That implies that your data, so imagine your customer's data, right? You have a high value VIP customer who has shared very sensitive information with your law firm. And that information, if it is uploaded to a CRM platform, may be getting replicated multiple times across the country and even potentially outside of the country. So I'm not saying that that is happening now, but it's a conversation that you need to have, right? Call your vendors. Again, it doesn't require you to be a cybersecurity expert. It just requires you to ask that question and to have a list of all the different solutions that you use in the law firm.
Let me
Backup.
ask Henry
Mhm.
and Adam, you guys something here to just
Mhm.
bring it back to something that's super concrete for all lawyers. And I'll ask this almost tongue in cheek, but like email. Is our email valuable? Is that important to have that secure?
Absolutely.
Is my stuff there?
No, absolutely. So many people rely on third-party providers to safeguard their data. Let it be, for example, Office 365. The fact is that Microsoft provides some very robust solutions to protect your data. But out of the box, just when you create a Windows and Office account, pretty much all of those features are disabled. They are disabled by default. So, and Microsoft in the terms and agreements, they make it very clear that it's up to you, the user, to go in and select what features you want to be enabled or disabled to protect your data. So it comes back to us. It's our responsibility. If we're going to be adopting a solution, we're going to be adopting a tool, we need to know what is going to happen to the data.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And
And for
again, who owns the
context that
data?
everyone that listens, in the cyber claims world, like the most common claim that's paid out is for business email compromises and I think that with law firms where even just one attorney at a firm's law account got hacked. And so, you're like, oh, it just was access to their email, but it's like, well, no, you know what? They had a lot of attachments that had been sent to them at different times. They had contracts. Worst case scenario, when they have like very sensitive client data, and it is a terrible experience, if not ruinous, to have to tell all your clients that you lost all their data.
No, absolutely. And that is something that we do on a regular basis. And believe me, it is not a very difficult process to secure the Office 365 tenant. But most people don't do it, right? Because we don't know. But no, excellent question. That is a good question. The other one is who owns your data. Be sure that it's in that contract, right? So many times we're paying monthly memberships to access whatever, an accounting software, a CRM, and then you decide to go to a new platform, and then that provider may want to hold your data hostage. So be sure that you read those contracts in detail. And when that data is deleted, be sure that you get a certification of such deletion, right? So don't assume that they're going to delete it. Be sure that you make them responsible for deleting that and for certifying for providing an assertion. All right, cool. So now let's talk about risk tolerance and risk appetite, right? So that is the next one. So you identified your assets. You said, all right, cool. These are my most critical assets. These are the vulnerabilities that it has. What is the impact that it will have if a threat affects my one of my critical assets, and you already have the impact and the likelihood. So going back to Adam's point at the beginning, there's no checklist, right? Because every single law firm is different. How much risk do you want to take? And that is an individual's decision, right? What is the worst possible case scenario? Again, for that website to be offline. What if your email goes offline for 2 hours versus 2 weeks? Some attorneys, may say, yeah, well, I only have a couple of clients. I'm almost close to retirement, or I'm not very active. Not a big deal. I just simply call my clients and I'd say, hey, my email is offline. Don't email me. For some of the law firms, that will be terrifying to have their email offline. So again, it changes, and that is an analysis that each one of us needs to make. What will be the worst possible scenario that you're willing to accept, and the worst possible scenario that you're not willing to accept, and so that again will help you in that conversation with your IT service provider. The IT service provider absolutely wants to sell you the best of the best. Think of it as when you go to buy a vehicle. If you don't know what you're looking for, chances are that you're going to be driving out of the parking lot with with the most expensive vehicle full of features that you will never use. So that is the purpose of this exercise. Understand what you're looking for, and then you can have a more productive conversation with your providers. So by the end of this exercise, you're going to have something that looks like this. And again, this is a very overly simplified version of a complete risk assessment. If people want to conduct a more complete assessment, I have a few templates that I'll be glad to share. But for this webinar, I just wanted to provide a very overly simplified version of the assessment. What questions do you have, Adam or Kevin?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think the chart's helpful. So for the risk tolerance, I guess, I know you can do very like sophisticated things like using math. None of us here want to use math, right? But you can
No, just break it into high, medium, or low.
okay.
Let's
So
put
the
it that
risk
way.
would be high, medium, or low or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you have the impact, right? So you say, hey, listen, I want to protect my escrow account, and I have a link that is on my website where clients can make a payment directly. That is a critical asset. What is the impact? Very high, absolutely. Imagine if that asset gets compromised. What is the
Could you
likelihood?
give,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Yeah, what is the likelihood of that happening? Well, if you're relying on the bank and you ask the important questions, they could share with you. Most likely, they could tell you what is the likelihood of that happen, which is likely going to be low. But even if it is low, right, even there's a very low likelihood of those escrow account being impacted. What is your tolerance for that? Are you willing to take a risk at all or not at all? Right? So that is so that helps you again, it's just to help you prioritize the assets that should be protected. You may identify a fax machine. You may identify a copy machine that in your eyes you say like, whatever, that is just a copy machine that I got for $100 at Office Depot. I'm not going to protect it. But then when you go through these exercises, you start realizing that all of your clients' data is being scanned or copied in that machine. That is definitely a critical asset that has to be protected. So yeah.
And I was going to ask Henry, going
Mhm.
back to that slide, even
Sure.
just giving, let's suppose it is a small solo practitioner firm, a personal injury, like what are some other, can you just kind of go give other examples of how that would be filled out for a small firm like that?
Ask me again. I didn't understand the question.
Yeah. I'm just asking,
Mhm.
suppose we have a small solo practitioner firm and they just do some personal injury and that's sort of, their small setup. What are other things that they fill out on this?
Sure. So let me the next exercise may answer your question. If not, we'll come back here and then I'll take a second shot at the answer. Um, when we start talking about data, there's a second exercise that's the data mapping, right? It's very, very useful. Again, it's not a complete solution. It's just one more piece of the puzzle to secure your practice. I like the data mapping because it helps answer questions like the one that you have, Kevin. So the very first thing, ask how is the data arriving from clients, right? Does it come via email? Do you have a portal? Is the receptionist collecting that information in a piece of paper, via fax, printed email, CRM, social media questionnaire? I cannot believe that some people do that, but I've seen it out there. But it happens, right? So the next question is going to be, well, all right, cool. So I have the data. Are copies being made? And that is the biggest headache. Step number two, copies being made, because that just makes your brain explode. So if anything, try to eliminate additional copies, unnecessary copies. That just brings that cybersecurity hygiene into the picture. Are copies being made? Well, there's got to be a backup created somehow, somewhere. Somebody's creating a backup. If you have an IT department and the CRM belongs and was developed by your firm, you have an IT group that is creating backups. They should be creating backups. Where are those backups kept? Are they being sent out of your location, out of your office? Are they being held in a data center in a remote location? Who has access to those backups? Very, very important. And this is regardless if anybody practices personal injury or family law or contracts law, right? You can go through this questionnaire. The other one is cloud storage. Are you saving backups to Google Drive or to OneDrive, or I forgot the other one. There are quite a few out there available. But the other ones are your copy machine, fax machine that may automatically be creating additional copies, right? That they keep those copies in memory. And if it is connected to the internet, that is a huge vulnerability that you have in your law firm. The other one, going back to your email, my recommendation will be to not, and I have seen so many different businesses that they receive an attachment with critical information from a client, and then they start doing a forward, right? Every single time you do a forward, you just create a new copy that is residing in somebody's email box. And then they do a reply to all that includes that attachment. Well, now everybody has, now you have about 10 different copies of that same critical attachment in multiple different email boxes. And that just creates a nightmare once you are done with that client's file, when the scope of work has been completed, and once you, if you want to keep that data for, let's say, 5 years, 7 years, whatever regulation you are subject to, it just becomes a nightmare 5 to 7 years down the road. Where are you going to find all the multiple different copies of that document that it should be deleted from? So if anything, email, simply save it to a shared drive that is fully protected, and then share links to that shared drive instead of the actual document. So that way in the future, when you delete that document or that folder, all of those links will be no longer active or valid. The other one is to encrypt data, right? Encryption, absolutely, really good. But be careful who owns your data. So you may have a CRM platform that says, absolutely, send all of your data to us. We're going to be saving your documents, your customers' data, your financials, and everything is going to be encrypted. All right, but who's doing the encryption, right? Do you have access to manage your data? From a support point of view, again, who has access to your data on a 24/7? Is there a help desk outside of the US, outside of the state? And when it comes time to delete your files, fully get certifications, get something in writing from your provider that your data is actually being deleted later on. And again, we go back to that reasonable person standard, right? Take the reasonable steps to be sure that your data is actually being deleted by these online accounts. I know that we're getting close to Q&A. I just wanted to go some assumptions that I frequently hear. So the cloud solutions, so the Microsoft 365 or Google solutions, I hear a whole lot of people saying, well, my provider is going to take care of everything. So we already answered that question. The answer is no. We are responsible for taking the necessary steps or asking the right questions to be sure that our data is properly protected. So you cannot outsource all of your security concerns to the cloud provider. We still need to remain active in that process, asking the right questions. Cloud cannot be hacked. So cloud is not a technology, right? Cloud is just a business model. So they are data centers, they are servers, they're tangible items that I could walk in today and walk out with a complete server that may have all of your data. Who is your cloud provider? Where are they located? Are they replicating data inside of the US, outside of the US? What type of secure access do they have? Very important question. So right now, the trend in the industry is to have a private cloud provider. It might be a data center that is located in your same city, in your same town. You can actually go and take a tour of those facilities. You said, all right, cool. My data is going to be kept in your data center. Let me go over there. Let me see how easy would it be to enter your facility. Is anybody going to be asking me for an ID? What type of secure access do you have? Do you have cameras? So yeah, we can take a more proactive approach. Many times when I talk to people about cloud, people have this vision of something out there, right? Like the Matrix, it's virtual reality. And it's not, it's tangible items. It's simply the business model of how technology is sold, and you only consume what you need. And encryption, that is the other one. So many people that I talk to, they say, well, all of my data is encrypted, so I'm fine. Well, it is important to understand that there are multiple states of data, right? Data can be at rest, meaning that it's stored, it is safe. It can be in transit, meaning that you're emailing that information is being transferred to any location. And data can be used. When data has to be used, meaning that you need to look at your data, utilize it, read it, at that moment, the data is actually unencrypted. So there's no way that your data is 100% encrypted all of the time. So that is something to know. And implementing controls. And under HIPAA regulations, there are a lot of big changes coming because unfortunately, a lot of people were simply writing policies, posting them online or in the employee manual and saying, hey, these are our policies for the company, how we're going to be protecting the network. But there was no actual controls deployed and implemented. So yeah, we need to take more proactive steps, not simply having policies posted out there if we're not going to be taking the steps that are listed in that policy. So that'll be an example of what the FTC will label as an unfair, deceptive business practice, because you're telling your clients that you're going to do X, Y, Z, but in reality, you're not doing that.
And Henry,
Um,
we've really got to stay tuned for anything related to federal regulations, right? I mean, that's going to, it's always been evolving, but it's going to continue evolving, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So just very quickly, I'll go through a technology. They may ask, well, what can I do? So you may want to ask the following questions for multi-factor authentication. Be sure, so there are three different factors, right? It could be something that is known to the user, that is possessed by the user, or a characteristic of the user. So when selecting a multi-factor authentication solution, try to have something that requires two items from two different categories, not from the same category. With the Office 365, Kevin, you asked a question, the tenant, absolutely many of those security features are disabled. So take a proactive step of understanding what is it that you need to enable and enable them. If you have a VPN solution, ask where's the gateway located. And this is very important because there are a few VPN providers that they do not have any gateways in Florida, which means that to connect to your network, even if you're Starbucks and your office is across the street and you use a VPN connection that is going to take your information all the way up to Georgia and back to across the street, and if there is a breach that happened with the technology in Georgia, that may be subjecting you to a different jurisdiction than if it happened only in the state, right? And the other one is DNS filtering solutions. So there's a whole lot of machines and technology that we have in our homes or offices, Alexa, smart vacuum, a smart thermostat. We have no idea if those devices are already compromised and they're already sending information to China, Russia, you name it. So then DNS filtering will allow you and will alert if there's anything that is trying to connect with a foreign country, a foreign government without your knowledge. So those will be some solutions. And yay, we finished. So there you go. That's the final slide.
Yeah.
Let's go through Q&A. And
Yeah.
I apologize, I went over. Go ahead.
That's okay. No, as you guys can tell, Henry can answer any more technical questions you may have. So reach out to him for those.
Yeah.
And I told you at the beginning, I wanted to give you something to take away that you can do. And of course, we can't tell you all exactly what to do, but you can identify your critical assets and uh, think about your risk tolerance, analyze your risk tolerance, and use a chart like that to map your data or list your data. And so you have something somewhere to start. And we are planning, I don't think we have any dates, but we'll have future webinars that will hopefully give you more information about next steps later in the year.
Yep. Yeah, and so anyone, please feel free to type a question in the Q&A. I've got the dialogue box open here for me to review if you want to submit things or discuss now. One thing I just love this analogy, and we've discussed it so much, even on the committee, is one way to sort of think about cybersecurity is is comparing it to other services that a law firm may need. Um, most attorneys, they have all their finances and accounting work that needs to be done in terms of the practice of law. And very frequently, you're hiring an accountant to help you with those things and navigate those things. It doesn't mean you aren't involved in looking at the numbers and seeing what's being done. The more you understand about your own accounting going on at your own law firm, the better, and the better you can still understand that. And as you know, under the ethical rules, while you can delegate work, there's still things that are all within the realm of falls on you as the attorney. And I think cybersecurity is something that's very much moving in a similar pattern. While you often will need IT professionals, cybersecurity professionals to assist you with implementing these different things. It's still upon you to understand what's going on and the data is your asset that you have to control and manage. And you will oversee other professionals who do help you with that, but making sure you have a strong grasp on it, um, will really help, you know, avoiding ethical issues, but along with preventing that data breach, which is everyone's, worst situation to deal with, and having to let your clients know about that.
Yeah, Kevin, I think
Um,
the first question's for you, the PowerPoint.
um, no, we won't have this PowerPoint available for distribution right now, but we are planning to have the CLE available to, in the future, uh, be viewable again. Um, and talking about human risk and social engineering. I kind of forget if everyone can see these here.
No,
I'll
yeah.
come back to the human risk and social engineering, but I saw we had one law student interested in pursuing cybersecurity. Um, I would say it is a great area of growth. I was talking with law students yesterday. Um, it's kind of the merging of technology and law. Privacy is often considered the substantive area of law because there actually is a body of law developing there. And then a lot of IT and cybersecurity branches out from that. And it's an area full of lots of different certifications, and we could probably talk about that all separately. Um, but I know we're almost at time, but for a moment, Henry, do you want to talk about human risk and social engineering in some of these? It wasn't as much the main topic, but can hit on it
No,
for a
no,
moment.
absolutely. And let me go back to the cybersecurity law a little bit. So determine what is it that you want to do. I will say that many times we talk about data privacy and cybersecurity in the same sentence, but it will be two different fields, right? So data privacy will deal with data only. Super important, absolutely highly regulated, and I will say that is more applicable to a law student. Cybersecurity has to do with the technology that will be implemented to protect the data. And I will say that it becomes more and more relevant as litigation about data breaches are evolving, where you need to understand more whether a business was reasonable or not in protecting their assets. So absolutely understanding cybersecurity critical, but if you can start with data privacy, that is the highly regulated and where the law comes into the question. About human risk and social engineering, no, I will say no, we didn't dive into that. We wanted to name a little bit of the or show people how they should prioritize the assets to protect because the question so far has been like, hey, You convince me. Cybersecurity is super important. I should be securing my law firm. I get it. You don't need to tell me again. I get it. But where do I start? So today's webinar was more about, hey, where should you start? And that is prioritizing the assets that you need to protect. Once you fully understand what are your critical assets and the impact that it could have if one of those assets is breached, then you can almost automatically see the type of protections that you should implement, right?
That'd be a good whole
Yeah.
other webinar to do. Um,
Yeah.
should
We
we
will continue.
yeah,
Yes.
should we put in the chat the code again for the CLE, or is it going to be mailed out?
Actually, Henry, what? No, it won't be emailed out. So, Henry, go ahead. If you could move just to the title slide that we had. I
Oh,
don't know
sure.
if you're able to do it with. Um,
Yeah.
that has the code on it for the CLE. It's there's not this isn't a CLE where you have to have live codes. You are just certifying because you're a trustworthy Florida attorney that you listen to this webinar, and it should come up there that you participated in it on this day and have viewed it. Well, that does conclude this webinar today. I know plenty of you guys got to get to work and do other
Yep.
things. Thank you for those that were able to attend so much. Please, we will be having additional webinars coming up in the future, and feel free to reach out with questions to us. All
Absolutely.
Thanks,
right.
everybody. And Christina, if you asked the law student who asked the question, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to any of us.
Yes, and if you're lost, you may not know, but any Florida attorney, you can go to their bar page and find their email address. So, um, feel free to look us up and send emails. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today, and have a great afternoon.